Hi everyone, I've got Alex Turnbull with me this morning from Advicta. I came across Alex, a fascinating conversation when I'm mentoring some athletes at Loughborough University, and Alex came in to talk to them about future careers and really explain the importance of the characteristics, if you like, they're learning through sport, and why these are so important to employers. So maybe Alex, you could share with us what you said on the day and how directors of sport can push these characteristics.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And thanks for having us, Chris. I think what we kind of talk about a lot is sport gives you the skills to go into anything. So you can stay in sport, you can go into education, you can go into finance or real estate or whatever it is, because of the skills that you develop. And most employers across any sector would kind of identify the softer skills as the bits where maybe their teams are lacking. So the resilience elements, to be able to communicate with a wide range of people and seniorities is really, really key for us. The problem solving that I guess potentially is lacking, particularly at the graduate level, that critical thinking, that ability to do stuff slightly differently, is something that employers are really, really hot on at the minute. And largely that emphasis on being able to work in a team, understanding your role, being able to take leadership opportunities as and when they come through, is something that generally employers are finding quite hard to come by. That kind of attitude of, yes, I'm going to give this a go, that competitive edge, that drive longer term. All of these bits are something that effectively athletes can bring to the table in different ways, but employers are really, really hot on at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and obviously, most of the directors of sport you know, listening to this will know those. So give them some evidence, Alex. Explain to them how this really does help and the industries, if you like, that you're working with.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I know most of you will have had some research historically, but there's been a study last year from Harvard Business School looking at those that participated in sport whilst at university or in secondary education. And effectively, what they found is that effectively, if you played sport in those times, you were way more likely to earn more money. On average, you held more senior jobs when you graduated from university, and you were more liked at work. And all of these kind of positive outcomes came from the fact that you played sport growing up and throughout your education. I think it's no secret that those in senior positions in particular have played competitive sport across the FTSE 500, across C-suite women. Um, and ultimately, sport is the catalyst for that skill development. It's the catalyst for giving you opportunities to experience new things, experience new people, um, give you the opportunity to be driven and competitive, and give you almost that forum to express yourself in a way that education and work experience may do, but in slightly different contexts. And yeah, we're really confident that the 10,000 athletes we work with have an elevated sense of those skill sets that employers want.
And would there be any particular skills that you think, sports teachers could be, if you like, more deliberate with? Because we say that sport builds resilience and teamwork and leadership, but are there any specific skills, or what are the higher order skills in particular employers are looking for? And how do you think directors of sport and sports teachers could be more deliberate in coaching them?
Good question. Good question. I think there's a real focus on the common skills, as you mentioned, and less of an understanding on the ones that maybe sound a little bit more corporate. So your strategic thinking, for one, project management is a really, really key one. I mean, athletes across a cycle, across a year, across a season, are looking at their development, their tracking, their goal setting, as much as they're looking at their delegation and teamwork and potentially tapering throughout the season. So being really conscious and clear about the skills that people are developing whilst they're in education is important outside of the obvious athletic based skill sets. I think to really hone in on personal softer skills is important. So the displaying of emotional control, high pressure situations are very, very common. I mean, we all take sport seriously, whether you're in your local cup final, whether it's the schools league championships, or whether it's kind of the World Cup final. I think we'd all feel that pressure from ourselves. And staying calm, making good decisions and being really pragmatic in high pressure situations are things that people should recognize. And I suppose one, teachers should point out and encourage people to reflect on whilst they're participating. But also, it should be spoken about in the classroom a little bit off the pitch and in kind of training sessions. But I mean, when it comes to being deliberate with that, I would definitely focus on that communication bit and making sure that people are aware of that. And we help with that. We've got plenty of resources if people want to be shared some of the content around the skill sets and how to articulate those. But it is important that students get really comfortable telling people about their skills,
Yeah.
not just having them, I suppose.
I think that's really important. I know a couple of the girls I'm mentoring at Loughborough, they don't understand the skills they've got. And when you explain to them that, you know, one of them's come back from an ACL injury, so the resilience and as you said, the planning and the graft and the setbacks and the help she's had to ask for over a 12-month period, she has learnt an incredible amount and has picked up an incredible amount number of skills. And I think we do sometimes need to make sure our students know that so that they can talk about them on interview or in their letters. The other thing we were talking about earlier, Alex, is of course a lot of directors of sport and sports teachers are very invested in their students and will keep contact with them, when they're 25, 35 older. So once they've left school, what sort of avenues or suggestions would you give them to help with their employment?
Think there's a number of things. I think the first key concept for us is reminding people that it doesn't necessarily matter as a sports person what you study or what your interest is in today. That can change and your skill set carries. It's transferable into
Yeah.
any sector. Ultimately, that is retained. So making sure that keeping an open mind is at the forefront of what they're thinking. They're able to access resources on lots of different sectors, so they know what opportunities are out there. So, I mean, we've done loads around the professional development on our platform. People can read about different sectors and how to get into them. There's loads of information publicly available on different opportunities out there. So making sure first and foremost they're confident in that they can go into anything, but they also know where to find the information around asset management or if they want to go into insurance or if they want to stay within education and sport, that's there.
Mm.
But then obviously pointing them towards companies that help, right? I know we obviously do some of that. There is plenty of organizations out there. The career services at universities are around. And we also talk quite a lot around mentoring and making sure that people have mentors that they can look up to and speak to throughout their kind of professional careers. That can come from their education, it can come from work, or it can, in a lot of cases, come from sport. So keeping that strong mentoring network out there
Mm.
is one of the things we recommend quite highly.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I know for a lot of directors of sport, that's one of the things that gives them the greatest pleasure, when a former student, phones them up or gets in contact and they're 25 and, they need some advice. And, you are a mentor, as a teacher,
Mm.
for life. So, yeah, that's really, really great advice, I think. And then just finally, Alex, we were then flipping it on its head when we were chatting beforehand, saying, what advice would you give to directors of sport when they're recruiting, whether that is, just a new PE teacher or a head of netball, or head of rugby, or assistant director of sport, or whatever it may be? What advice would you give to them when they're recruiting their staff for their team?
It's really tough ultimately to get the right candidate sometimes, and hopefully there's some tips that we can help with because I mean we work across all the sectors really, particularly finance, tech, real estate, but also in education and sport. And making sure that your candidate list or your shortlist is from a variety of backgrounds is massively important. And that doesn't happen by chance, usually. Usually it comes from having a really clear, open, and attractive job description. That's obviously important. But going to a number of sources rather than the same mechanisms to source candidates, you're going to get the same people coming into your institution each application kind of window. So whether that's at the graduate hiring end or that senior athlete end or experienced hire, there are a number of different services that are out there that can help with that. Clearly, UK sport jobs we will all use. Maybe post it on the Bucks website, that kind of stuff. We have a jobs board where you can advertise vacancies and get support and finding athletes to come into the sector. Um, it's also about making sure that you are having accessible hiring practices. So usually a virtual first round these days, modern times is popular. We ask people to submit videos rather than cover letters now because we want that softer skill, personality based hiring to come through as much as we want their CV on their
Mm.
um, qualification list, I suppose. We also just want to make sure that people are really conscious of the questions they are asking at interviews because you can ask anything
Yeah,
ultimately. But making sure those questions solve a problem within your team. So if you think your team are really lacking an ability to project manage, or you think your team are really lacking a sense of strong decision maker, or maybe the opposite, someone who's maybe a bit more diplomatic and democratic in how they run things, be really conscious of the skill gaps within your teams, actively put those things on the job description, and then please make sure that that is followed up on an application and hiring kind of process because otherwise you end up in this cycle of hiring the same people all the time and getting the same applicants and ultimately that is strong in some senses, but there's no harm in seeing the skills of others.
yeah. And obviously, it'd be remiss of me not to mention that that's one of the things that we do at Ice Education, and Dan Scargill, our recruitment guy,
Cool.
is brilliant at this. But I think you're right. That I think we need to look a bit wider sometimes, don't we? So that's good advice as well. I think when we finish, Alex, I'll put the links that you've said from the Harvard study, and there are a number of other studies as well that I know you and I have shared before, and we put them at the bottom because it's always good to have the evidence as well, isn't it? But I really appreciate your time today, and if anyone wants to reach out to you, it's easy at Advictor. And I know particularly I would really recommended students at university uh, to register with you. It's free, isn't it, as well, to register with Advictor at university. So I think that's something as directors of sport, even if we just passed on that piece of information to our students when they left us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's all free for students and for athletes from your academic end, but also through to your professional Olympians and Paralympians. And as Chris says, if anyone has got any questions about either how to access those students and Olympians and getting them to come work for you, you can email us. But equally, if you want to push people our way to get some free support, development, make sure that they are thinking about their transition out of university, school, sport, whatever it is, then at any stage, please feel free to put them in touch.
That's great. Thanks, Alex, and thanks for your time today.
Perfect, Chris. Thanks, everybody.